It was my turn to get water. So I traveled down the slope to where the canoes were moored to the shore, carrying 2 large metal canteens with me on my side. I had to get into the canoe by myself at night and paddle out to the middle of the lake. It was a rare situation where you're able to get water from the lake to drink. You see, you'd paddle out to the middle, push the canteen down as far as you could under the water, and let it fill. And then you'd take it back and you could drink that water directly. Where was I, you might wonder? Where in the world can you drink water this pure? I was in the boundary waters, north of Minnesota, somewhere lost between Canada and Minnesota. It was a beautiful, pristine place. It was an adventure I'd like to tell you a little bit more about today. See, it was summer camp. I was a teenager, and there was this very special place in Orr, Minnesota, where teenagers would meet every year and participate in all variety of different sports. And they would teach you how to do these different activities: softball, basketball, volleyball, canoeing, sailing, windsurfing. It was one of the most exciting camps I've ever been to. But canoeing was one of my favorites. See, we had classes on canoeing and how to swamp the canoe and how to paddle and how to work together as a team. And it was all preparation for the 3-day wilderness canoe trip into the boundary waters. Now, this was one of my favorite activities, as I said. And I'd like to tell you some of the adventures that I had on that trip. See, that one was just an example of going out at night on crystal still water and getting water to drink. But we did a lot of other neat things too while we were up there. See, we were able to venture out in 10-man groups into areas where no motorboat is allowed. And when you get into these kind of areas like this, there is no creature comforts that we're used to. The only thing that's any sign that a person has been there before at our campsites is a fire pit and what you might call a sort of bathroom down the trail out in the woods. And that's it. Everything else you have to pack in on your own. So the adventure is just off the charts wonderful. When you are carrying your backpack with about 40 pounds of equipment, and you have your rec packs with about 40, 50 pounds of equipment, and you have your canoes, and you're traveling in the land of 10,000 lakes, portaging from lake to lake, and carrying this equipment on these portages is one of the most challenging things I've ever done. You see, you have to carry all this equipment and portage through muddy trails and push yourself to your body's limits. And it's just an amazing experience. And there were times when we would get to the end of those trails and we'd be so exhausted, so tired, that we would just fall into the cold water to refresh ourselves. And let me tell you, that water is cold. If you've ever felt really cold water, it's like being dipped into a bucket of ice. That was some cold water. Some other adventures we had were banana rafting. Has anybody ever been banana rafting? It's where you take 2 life vests, one up here and one down here, and you jump into the rapids and you just float down. That was fun. Have you ever been cliff jumping?
Oh yeah.
We did some neat cliff jumping. About the highest I've ever been is 30 feet or so, I believe.
Oh my.
But that's enough to get your adrenaline going, trust me. Sometimes it takes a couple minutes to convince yourself to jump into the water. And that was very memorable. We also enjoyed the camping and the campfires and the friendships that were developed around those campfires. One night we were camping out and talking. I think we were even telling scary stories that night, coincidentally, and we heard or saw somebody discovered that there was a moose, and this was at night, right down there where our canoes were. And so we were all sneaking around trying to see this moose because most of us had never seen one before. But these are some wild parts of the country. Bears, I didn't see one myself, but lots of people came back from canoe trips having seen bears. I remember one young man who was sitting minding his own business, just enjoying the lake, looking out, and he heard a noise behind him, and he turned around, and discovered a bear. And he had to figure out what to do to get out of there. So that was scary for him. Also loons. Have you seen those black loon birds that float on the water? And if they come across and see you, they will just disappear, sink underneath the water. So there is an amazing amount of wildlife up there that I really enjoyed. Eagles, bald eagles, all kinds of wildlife and birds. One of my other favorite memories from northern Minnesota are the northern lights. Very beautiful and amazing when they come out. And I remember one night I was walking across at camp, and it was late at night. I'd been working, and I was just kind of looking up at the sky, and all of a sudden there were the northern lights, totally unexpected. That was a beautiful scene. So these adventures that I discovered on this trip in northern Minnesota, in fact I went several summers, were something that created a lot of not only memories but lessons learned for me. I learned lessons about mind over muscle, carrying canoes on portages, when you have to tell yourself to keep going when your body is saying stop, stop. I learned about how nature touches our soul and awakens something within us. I learned about how adventure gives us a sense of perspective. I learned about how bonding around the campfire creates some really good memories. So all these lessons learned were impactful to me in my life, and the boundary waters for me are something more than just the waters in between Minnesota and Canada. They were a crossing, a transition for me. They were a personal boundary waters where I crossed over from getting out away from the home and my parents and discovering myself and discovering nature and discovering how it affected me. So I would just like to, in conclusion, say that these boundary waters were something that have affected my life, and if you ever get a chance to go to northern Minnesota and to get into a canoe and to paddle, something you won't soon forget.